When your own father laughs at you in front of everyone, something inside you doesn't break, it crystallizes. The sound of his voice, smooth with bourbon and pride, becomes the background noise of every decision you'll make afterward. The flash of chandeliers, the gleam of silver cutlery, the way the air hums with money and mockery, it all burns into memory. That night, I didn't just remember what he said. I remembered how it felt, the kind of humiliation that doesn't fade, only evolves. They thought they were laughing at my failure. They were wrong. They were forging my resolve. The Hale family Christmas party was a performance, not a gathering. The ballroom of my parents' Manhattan penthouse shimmered with gold light and quiet arrogance. Crystal glasses, a 10-foot spruce tree dusted with fake snow, a live string quartet in the corner playing carols no one really listened to. Waiters glided between the tables carrying trays of champagne and foie gras, and the air smelled like money and nostalgia. I hadn't planned to come. But when the invitation arrived, embossed, sealed, handwritten, I knew I had to. Maybe some masochistic part of me still wanted to be seen. Or maybe I just wanted to remember why I'd left in the first place. "Look who finally made it," my brother Mark said, as I walked in, his arm draped around his fiancée's shoulders. He was the image of our father-tailored navy suit, glass of scotch in hand, that polished grin that never reached his eyes. "Sophia, the stock trader," he announced loud enough for half the room to hear, "still chasing those little app dreams." My mother's smile was strained. "Mark," she said softly, "be nice. It's Christmas." Dad chuckled from the head of the table. "Let him speak, Maria. We're just teasing. After all, Sophia's got her little trading hobby, don't you, honey?" He looked at me like I was still 16 and naive enough to think ambition was cute. I smiled tight, polite. "It's not a hobby, Dad. It's algorithmic trading." That earned me a round of amused looks. Mark smirked. "Algorithmic trading? Sounds like fancy gambling." "People make a living doing that," I said. "Sure," he replied. "People also lose everything doing that." The laughter came soft at first, then rolled like a wave across the table. Champagne glasses clinked. Forks paused midair. I felt the warmth creep up my neck, but my expression didn't move. Years of practice. Mom sighed the way she always did when she wanted to make things disappear. "Let's not ruin dinner, please." Dad leaned back in his chair, his cufflinks catching the light. "We're not ruining anything. We're just having a little fun. No harm in that. No harm. Funny how people say that right before they wound you." Dinner was a blur of predictable conversation. Mark talked about his promotion, Vice President of Strategic Partnerships, whatever that meant. His fiancée gushed about the new brownstone they'd bought in Tribeca. Dad held court, telling stories about his hedge fund days, the good old market years. Every time the conversation lulled, someone would glance my way as if waiting for me to say something about my projects. I didn't. Silence was easier than defending myself to people who'd already decided I was a failure. "Are you still working from that shared office?" Dad asked finally. His tone was perfectly balanced between curiosity and condescension. "Yes," I said. "Downtown." He nodded, smiling as if he'd been proven right. "You should come work for Hale Investments, sweetheart. Get some real-world experience. You could learn from people who've built something that lasts." Mark snorted. "Or at least get a paycheck." I looked at them both. "I'm doing fine." Dad raised his glass. "To my family," he said. "And to stability." The toast rippled down the table. Everyone raised their glasses. Everyone but me. Later, when the plates had been cleared and the brandy arrived, I found myself standing near the window overlooking the city. Manhattan glittered beneath us, skyscrapers glowing like constellations. For a moment, I let myself imagine what they couldn't see: the late nights, the failed trades, the quiet persistence of building something in silence, the numbers that whispered to me in code pattern signals. The small wins turned into steady profit. The thing they called a hobby was already managing millions. But I didn't say a word. "Still staring at the skyline, huh?" Mark's voice slid in behind me. "You know, you could have had an office view like this if you'd just joined Dad's firm. I prefer building my own." He laughed. From what exactly stock tips and Reddit threads I turned? From strategy. From discipline. From knowing the market better than people who think they own it. He blinked. Whatever you say, sis. Then with a grin, just don't blow your savings chasing a dream. I smiled back. I won't. I already made it. He didn't understand what I meant. None of them did. By the time dessert arrived, the conversation had shifted to real estate and baby showers. Things that made everyone feel secure, predictable. I let their words wash over me like static. Outside snow had begun to fall, soft and deliberate. The city lights blurred behind the frost. Then my phone buzzed in my clutch. Once, twice. Dad frowned. No phones at the table, Sophia. I glanced at the screen. The sender's name made my pulse spike. Bloomberg Financial. Urgent. I began. Dad waved his hand. It can wait. But I couldn't look away. The preview text glowed like lightning in the dark. Breaking Forbes announces new stock billionaire founder of Helion Capital revealed. My throat tightened. I opened the full notification. Sophia Hale, age 29, net worth $5.2 billion. For a second, I thought my heart had stopped. Mark looked up curious. Everything okay? I met his gaze across the table, the chandelier light reflected in his eyes. Then I smiled, slow, steady, the kind that finally feels like truth. Everything's perfect. The TV above the bar flickered on, muted but visible. CNBC's ticker rolled across the bottom. Forbes confirms youngest self-made stock billionaire revealed Sophia Hale, CEO of Helion Capital. The room fell silent. Mark froze mid-sentence. My father's hand halfway to his drink stopped trembling. My mother's lips parted, but no sound came out. I took a sip of champagne, savoring the quiet. Well, I said lightly, setting the glass down, looks like my little trading hobby paid off. No one laughed this time. That night as I stepped out into the cold, the snow glittered against the pavement like 1,000 tiny mirrors. The city didn't feel so big anymore. It felt exactly the right size for what came next. They'd spent years doubting me, dismissing me, mistaking my silence for surrender. But silence, I'd learned, is just strategy in disguise. And tonight, I'd made my first public trade, exchanging humiliation for history. The market had finally turned in my favor. The morning light hit my apartment like a spotlight, sharp and accusing. Manhattan was still half asleep outside my window, but my phone hadn't stopped buzzing since dawn. Notifications, emails, missed calls. Journalists, investors, people who'd once ignored me now suddenly remembered my name. The Forbes article had detonated overnight. I'd gone to bed a ghost and woken up by a headline. The screen on my phone read, Sophia Hale, the secret billionaire behind Helion Capital. I stared at it for a long time. The words didn't even feel real. Secret billionaire. As if I'd been hiding out of arrogance, not self-preservation. Another buzz. Erin's name flashed next my COO. My closest ally, the only one who'd known the truth for years. You're trending everywhere, she said when I picked up. Her voice was calm but tight. Twitter, Bloomberg, even the Times picked it up. Good press or bad, both. The usual mix. You're a genius, a disruptor, a recluse. They love the mystery. They're calling you the woman who beat Wall Street. I exhaled, half amused, half numb. And the market's up 3% in after hours. Investors are ecstatic. You made them very rich overnight. I moved to the window. The city glittered like a million screens, the kind of view that used to make me feel small. Now it just looked alive. What about the family? I asked quietly. Erin hesitated. You really want to know? Yes. They've been calling the office. Your father twice. Your brother left a voicemail. I laughed softly. Of course he did. Erin didn't join in. Sophia, this changes everything. They're going to come to you now. Everyone will. I know, I said. That's why I'm going in early. By 7:30, I was in the Helion Capital lobby. The air smelled faintly of espresso and ambition. Employees who used to barely glance at me now stood straighter when I passed. Their greetings had shifted from Morning Sophia to Good Morning, Ms. Hale. The sound of respect was strange, almost too formal, almost foreign. Aaron met me at the elevator, a tablet in one hand and 2 coffees in the other. You should see the press inquiries list. CNBC wants a live interview by noon. Forbes wants a cover shoot. No interviews. Not yet. They'll push. They always do. The elevator doors slid shut. Our reflection glimmered in the steel, me and my black coat hair, still damp from the shower, eyes tired but steady. How bad is it inside? Aaron smiled faintly. Depends who you ask. Half the office is celebrating. The other half looks terrified. Good, I said. Let them be both. When we reached the top floor, the digital wall behind reception displayed a Bloomberg headline in full-color, Helion capitals, "Hidden Prodigy Exposed." The article scrolled beneath it, complete with a photo of me walking into this very building 3 days earlier. I'd been wearing jeans and a coffee stain on my sleeve. The same image now looped across every financial network in America. Delete that from the lobby screen, I told the receptionist. But it's great PR. Exactly. We don't need PR. We have results. Aaron gave me a sidelong look as we walked toward my office. You realize, right? You're officially a public figure now. There's no going back. I nodded. I never planned to. My office was quiet. The kind of silence that hums beneath the weight of noise waiting outside. I sat down, logged into the trading terminal, and watched the data flow in. Helion's fund performance was soaring, capital inflows doubling by the hour. 4 new investors had requested meetings before lunch, 1 from Singapore, 1 from Zurich, 2 from Silicon Valley. Money like blood, it always finds the heartbeat. But under the adrenaline, a different thought pulsed. What now? For years I'd been chasing validation. Not from investors, but from one dinner table, one disbelieving pair of eyes. And last night, I finally had it. The power, the silence, the reversal. So why didn't it feel like victory? A soft knock on the door. Aaron stepped in. You should eat something. I'm not hungry. You've been up all night. So has the market. She sighed. You know most people would be celebrating. You made history, Sophia. I closed the laptop. I didn't do this for history. Then for what? I looked at her. To stop being their disappointment. She didn't reply, but her eyes softened the way someone looks at a wound they can't fix. Your father's on line 1, she said finally. You can ignore it if you want. I've been ignoring him for 4 years. Aaron paused. Maybe it's time you didn't. I let the phone ring twice before I answered. Dad, I said. His voice was slower than I remembered. So it's true. It is. I watched the segment this morning. Forbes, CNBC, all of it. I waited. I don't know what to say. Try, congratulations. There was a silence heavy enough to bend the air. Then softly. You made it, Sophia. I was wrong. I closed my eyes. The words should have felt like justice, but they didn't. They just felt overdue. I didn't need you to say that, I murmured. Maybe not, but I needed to. We talked for a while, stilted, awkward, 2 people walking across a bridge half-built and full of old cracks. When he finally hung up, I stared at the receiver, my hand trembling slightly. Forgiveness wasn't supposed to feel this lonely. By noon, Helion's name was everywhere. Reporters gathered outside the building. Drones hovered above Wall Street. Some employees couldn't focus. Others worked twice as hard, afraid of being noticed for the wrong reasons. Erin handled the chaos like she always did, with calm precision. I just watched. The empire I'd built in silence was suddenly louder than ever. At one point, she came back with a grin. You just hit 5.2 billion net worth officially. Paper value, I corrected. Still counts. I shrugged. Numbers aren't the story. They never were. She tilted her head. Then what is the story? I looked out over the skyline. The part that comes next. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the towers, I stayed long after the office had emptied. The city was quiet again, the way it had been the night I started Helion. Just me, a laptop, and too much to prove. I opened the old folder labeled Genesis Algorithm. The code looked primitive now, almost childish, but it was the foundation of everything. The numbers, the patterns, the intuition. My version of faith. Outside the window, the lights of the financial district flickered like a heartbeat. Somewhere out there, my family was still processing what had happened. Maybe they were proud. Maybe they were just confused. Either way, the balance had shifted. I wasn't the daughter they pitied anymore. I was the woman they couldn't define. I leaned back in my chair, letting the hum of the servers fill the room. For the first time in years, I wasn't running from their laughter. I was standing in its echo calm, unshaken. The world finally knew my name. Now I had to decide what to do with it. The headlines hadn't cooled down by the next morning. My name was still glowing on every business screen in the country. Forbes, CNBC, Bloomberg, every network had a new angle, my rise, my secret, my fortune. Even the gossip blogs tried to turn me into a symbol, the quiet girl who conquered Wall Street. I'd stopped counting how many times I'd read my own name before breakfast. It was surreal, like watching someone else's story play out with my face attached. But inside Helion Capital, there was no time to admire the chaos. There never was. Morning boss Erin said, stepping into my office with a tablet under her arm. You've got 34 new investor requests, 3 acquisition offers, and 5 universities asking if you'll give a talk on financial innovation. Tell them no to everything except the universities, I said, without looking up from my screen. She blinked. You actually want to do the talks eventually, but not yet. I just don't want to sound like the kind of billionaire who says no to education. Erin smiled faintly. PR chess. I like it. I glanced up. How's the team holding up, exhausted but loyal? The trading floor's on fire, figuratively. We just closed a record quarter. Everyone's afraid to leave before you do. I leaned back. Then I should probably leave early. She laughed. You won't. She was right. I wouldn't. The rest of the morning blurred into the usual rhythm of numbers and negotiations. Stock performance liquidity ratios. New algorithmic optimizations. It was my world built line by line, trade by trade. Every decision carried weight, not because of the money, but because of what it proved that I could build something that didn't need my father's approval to exist. At noon, my assistant buzzed. You've got a delivery. I frowned. From who, don't say. Just arrived by hand. A moment later, she carried in a long, slim box wrapped in silver paper. I tore the edge, expecting another corporate gift or investor bribe, but inside was a single gold fountain pen and a note written in sharp, deliberate handwriting. Congratulations. The market has finally noticed what I couldn't. Dad. I stared at it for a long time. The pen glinted in the light like something sacred and guilty at once. I wanted to feel vindicated, but instead, all I felt was tired. I closed the box and set it aside. By late afternoon, I was deep in a strategy call with our Singapore division when Erin stepped back, in her expression unreadable. What I asked, muting the call. CNBC's running a live feature, she said quietly. Your father's being interviewed. I froze. About me? She nodded. I unmuted the TV across the room. The screen flickered to life with the anchor's polished smile. And now we're joined by Richard Hale, founder of Hale Investments, and father of newly revealed billionaire Sophia Hale. My father appeared on screen, sitting in his immaculate home office tie, perfectly knotted expression, confident. The same man who'd mocked me at dinner now spoke with a warmth that almost seemed rehearsed. She's always been brilliant, he said, smiling for the cameras. I might have underestimated how far she'd go, but that's what great daughters do, surprise their fathers. The anchor chuckled. So there's no bad blood? Of course not, he replied smoothly. We're proud of her. Always have been. I mute the TV. Erin waited. You okay? I laughed low and bitter. He's rewriting history on live television. That's what powerful men do, she said softly. Then maybe it's time they met someone who doesn't play by those rules. That night I didn't go home. I stayed in the office long after everyone else had gone, the city glowing beneath me like a living heartbeat. My reflection stared back from the glass, composed, sharp, untouchable. The woman on the news. The woman I'd created. My phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't press or investors. It was Mark. "Dinner tomorrow, Dad wants to talk." I typed back one word, "Fine." The restaurant was private quiet. Too expensive to feel real. My father sat at the end of the table, perfectly centered between two flickering candles. Mark was already there, phone in hand, pretending not to check stock alerts. "Sweetheart," Dad said, standing to kiss my cheek. "You look incredible." "Thanks," I said. "You look public." He laughed lightly. "You saw the interview." "I did. I thought it might help calm the narrative," he said. "Keep the family name strong." By lying, by correcting perception, he countered. "You're not the only one who understands markets, Sophia. Optics are part of the trade." I met his eyes. "Except I trade in facts." He smiled thinly. "You've always been dramatic." Mark jumped in before the air could snap. "Let's not do this. It's Christmas next week. Can't we have one dinner without turning it into a board meeting?" I looked at him. "This is a board meeting. You just don't realize it." My father set down his glass. "I'm not your enemy." "Then stop acting like one." He leaned back. "You think I'm trying to steal your spotlight? I'm not. But you have to understand your success reflects on me. You're part of the Hale legacy." "I'm not your legacy," I said quietly. "I'm my own." For a long moment, no one spoke. The restaurant around us hummed with low chatter, the clink of glass on glass. My father studied me the way he used to study market charts, calculating, assessing risk. "You've changed," he said finally. "No," I said. "I just stopped apologizing." When I left, the cold hit hard. Snow had started to fall again, soft and deliberate, the kind that blurs streetlights into halos. I walked for blocks without direction, hands buried in my coat pockets, heart heavier than I wanted to admit. Every victory carried a cost. Mine had been silent. The years of building alone. The distance I'd convinced myself didn't matter. And now, standing under the white shimmer of winter, I realized I'd traded one kind of isolation for another. My phone buzzed again, a text from Aaron this time. "Forbes wants you on their cover next month. They're calling it The Woman Who Redefined Risk." I typed back, "Set it up." Then after a pause, another message. "But no interviews yet. Not until I'm ready." When I got home, the city lights pulsed faintly through the curtains. I poured a glass of wine and sat by the window, the skyline stretching endless and indifferent. Somewhere out there, my father was rehearsing the next chapter of our family myth. Somewhere my brother was trying to figure out how to fit my success into his narrative. But here in this small slice of silence, it was just me. The woman they'd doubted. The woman they'd dismissed. The woman who'd finally stopped asking for permission. Outside, a siren wailed in the distance. New York's lullaby. I took a sip of wine, letting the quiet sink in. Revenge, I realized, isn't loud. It's the calm that follows disbelief. The invitation came on a Thursday afternoon, sealed in dark green wax and embossed with gold letters. Bennett and Hale Annual Investor Gala. I stared at the words for a long time, half laughing. My father still insisted on hosting his yearly celebration of wealth, even as his empire wobbled under the weight of irrelevance. Under the invitation, a handwritten note in his familiar sharp scrawl read, "Would mean a lot if you came. Let's show the world the Hales stand together." I let out a soft laugh. The man who once mocked my ambition now wanted to borrow its reflection. Erin noticed the card on my desk when she came in with the afternoon reports. "He invited you?" "Apparently," I said, tossing it aside. "You're not going, right?" "I haven't decided." She raised an eyebrow. "Sophia, that event is a Shark Tank in designer suits. They'll eat the story alive." "Let them," I said quietly. "Sometimes you have to feed the sharks to remind them who owns the water." Erin sighed. "You're planning something." "I'm planning clarity." The night of the gala. Manhattan glowed like it had been polished for the occasion. The Waldorf's ballroom shimmered in gold and crystal, packed with financiers, CEOs, and socialites. Cameras flashed, music floated, and laughter echoed in the kind of way that meant everyone was watching everyone else. I stepped out of the black car, my dress a deep emerald silk that caught the light like liquid. Every head turned. The murmurs started immediately, some curious, some cautious. That's her. The Helion girl. The stock billionaire. My father stood near the entrance surrounded by his board members. When he saw me, his smile widened professional and practiced. "Sophia," he said, crossing the floor. "You look incredible." "So do you," I said evenly. "Public relations suits you." He chuckled, though his eyes flickered. "Come, let me introduce you." He guided me through the crowd, shaking hands, making introductions each one, another attempt to fold my success back into his legacy. "Gentlemen," he announced proudly to a circle of investors, my daughter Sophia, the mind behind Helion Capital. "Ah, the prodigy," one man said, raising his glass. "Your father must be proud." "Pride," I said, smiling politely, "is a luxury that comes late in my family." Laughter rippled uneasily through the group. My father tightened his grip on my arm, smiling a little too wide. "She's got her mother's wit," he said quickly, steering me away. Inside, the chandeliers glowed like captured fire. Waiters floated by with trays of champagne. Across the room, Mark was at the bar, whispering something into an investor's ear. He looked up and smirked when he saw me. "Well," he said as I approached, "look who decided to bless us with her presence." "Always nice to surprise the family," I said. "Still playing with stocks?" he asked, smirking. I smiled. "Still playing with nepotism," his grin faltered. "Touché." Before he could answer, the room lights dimmed slightly, signaling the start of the evening speeches. My father took the stage, his voice steady and confident through the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began tonight, "we celebrate not just another year of success for Bennett and Hale, but the power of family, the legacy that endures across generations. Many of you know my daughter Sophia, whose achievements have brought honor not only to herself but to this name." Applause, cameras, 1,000 eyes. He gestured toward me. "Sophia, come say a few words." For a heartbeat, the air froze. He hadn't warned me about this. But maybe that was the point. I rose slowly, every movement deliberate, and made my way to the stage. The spotlight hit me warm, blinding sharp. "Thank you," I said softly, taking the mic. "This is surreal." The crowd leaned in, hungry for whatever headline would come next. "My father's right," I continued. "This is about family. The family that teaches you what you're made of, sometimes through encouragement and sometimes through disbelief." A ripple of discomfort spread through the room. My father's smile stiffened. "I was once told that my ambitions were a waste of time," I said, my voice steady. "That success comes from stability, his stability. But I learned that the market rewards only one thing: clarity of value. For years, this name Hale has traded on a manufactured image of control and tradition." Whispers spread through the audience. I caught Aaron's eyes from the back of the room, steady, supportive. "Tonight I'm here not to claim a legacy," I announced, turning my gaze directly to the cameras flashing near the back. "I am here to redraw the line between our family's perception and its reality. My success is not an echo of Bennett and Hale. It is the sound of a new system built on transparency, replacing the old one built on pretense." I handed the microphone back to my father and stepped down. His hand trembled violently as he took it. "Always the poet," he said into the mic with a forced laugh. "That's my girl." But his voice had lost its authority. He was no longer controlling the room. He was trying to survive it. After the speeches, the room pulsed with quiet electricity. My father moved through the crowd, trying to patch the tension with forced charm. Mark cornered me near the terrace. "What the hell was that?" he hissed. "You just lit a match under Dad's entire reputation." "Reputation isn't reality, Mark," I said simply. He wanted to parade me as proof of the Hale legacy. I simply showed them that my success is the living proof of its obsolescence. He stared at me speechless, then stormed off. I stepped outside onto the balcony. The winter air bit through the silk of my dress, but I welcomed the chill. Below, New York pulsed with movement, cars, lights, life. Somewhere my father was probably trying to spin the moment into another redemption story. But for once I didn't care. Behind me the music swelled again, champagne laughter floating through the doors. The party went on, but something fundamental had changed. The power had shifted. I wasn't the daughter seeking approval anymore. I was the storm they hadn't seen coming. As I looked out over the city, the snow began to fall, slow, deliberate, endless. I took a deep breath, the air sharp in my lungs. Revenge didn't always come in fire. Sometimes it came in truth spoken calmly into a microphone beneath 1,000 chandeliers. And as the flakes touched my skin, cold and weightless, I whispered to the night, "Let them remember this silence." By the next morning, my speech had gone viral. Clips of me on stage, calm, deliberate, slicing through pretense with every word, were everywhere. Sophia Hale confronts her father Liv. Billionaire daughter shatters family legacy. Every major outlet had their version, each one spiced with admiration or outrage depending on who was watching. I woke up to 100 missed calls and nearly twice as many emails. Some congratulated me for being brave. Others accused me of being ruthless. It didn't matter. The result was the same: the world had chosen sides, and my father was on the losing side. Erin called before I'd even finished my coffee. "You've broken the internet," she said flatly. "Good morning to you too. You humiliated one of Wall Street's oldest names on camera. You realize what that means, that truth has better PR than power." "Try again," she said. "It means his investors are panicking. We've had 5 calls this morning from Bennett and Hale clients trying to move funds into Helion. You lit the match, Sophia." I stared out the window at the city below. Maybe it was time. By noon, my office was in chaos. Reporters outside stock tickers flashing Helion's logo every hour. Analysts arguing about whether my rebellion was symbolic or strategic. Inside, my team worked quietly, too aware that the air had shifted. Erin appeared in my doorway, tablet in hand. "He's bleeding investors. It's all over the feeds, board meetings, emergency calls, internal shakeups. It's a mess. And Helion flawless. We've had 3 new major investors on board this morning alone. Then the market's doing what it always does," I said, leaning back. "Rewarding transparency." But as she left, her words lingered. "He's bleeding." It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt empty. That evening, the sun bled orange across the skyline as I sat in my office watching the lights flicker on across the city. The phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Sophia came, my mother's voice quiet and trembling. "We need to talk. About the speech. About your father. He's not handling this well." I exhaled. I didn't expect him to. "Please just come home. You don't have to fix anything. Just talk to him. Mom, he built his whole world in control. I took it away. There's nothing left to talk about." Her voice cracked. "He's still your father, and I'm still his daughter. But we're not the same people anymore." She didn't argue, just sighed. "He's drinking again." That landed like a blow. Old memories stirred holiday fights, glass on marble silence the next morning. I rubbed my temple. "I'll think about it. Please," she said softly, "before there's nothing left to save." I didn't go that night. I buried myself in work instead, the glow of the monitors numbing the noise in my head. But around midnight, I opened one of the news streams out of habit and froze. Bennett and Hale faces internal collapse after public fallout. Below it, a smaller line, Richard Hale absent from board meeting, rumors of resignation. I closed the screen. For a long time, I just sat there staring at the reflection of my own face in the dark glass. This was what I'd wanted, wasn't it? Proof that I could win. Proof that I could take down the man who'd laughed at me. So why did it feel like ash in my mouth? Erin found me in the office early the next morning, still in last night's clothes, staring at the same window. "You look like you didn't sleep," she said. "I didn't. I saw the reports. It's official, he's stepping down." "The board forced him out," I nodded. "Then it's done." She studied me. "You don't look relieved." "I thought this would feel cleaner," I said. "It doesn't." "Because you cared," she said simply. "I cared about justice," I corrected. "Same thing sometimes." We stood there in silence, the hum of the trading floor filling the space between us. Finally she said, "Go see him." I can't. Yes, you can, she said quietly. Because if you don't, you'll regret it. Not because he deserves it, but because you do. I drove out to Connecticut that afternoon, the same long gray highway I'd once taken to leave. The mansion looked smaller now, somehow the perfection faded. The wreath on the front door had begun to brown at the edges. My mother opened the door, her face pale, her eyes rimmed red. He's in his office, she said. The air inside smelled of bourbon and dust. I walked down the hall past portraits that suddenly looked like ghosts until I reached the open doorway. He was there, my father. The man who'd once filled every room he entered. Now slumped in a chair, loose hands trembling around a half-empty glass. You came, he said without looking up. I did. Come to finish the job. His voice was rough, brittle. I came to see you, I said. He gave a dry laugh. You saw enough on stage. That wasn't revenge, I said quietly. No, he looked up, eyes bloodshot. Then what do you call it? Truth. The truth has teeth, he said, staring into his glass. And it's a bit hard. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence was heavier than shouting. You told the world who I really am, he said finally. Congratulations. You won. I didn't want to win like this. You think you get to choose? He laughed again, low and hoarse. The market doesn't care who's right, Sophia. It just cares who's left standing. I stepped closer. Then stand up. He looked at me startled. You built something incredible once, I said. Don't let it end like this. You don't owe me pride, but you owe yourself peace. He stared at me for a long time, then set the glass down. You sound like your mother. She's the only one who ever taught me how to listen. His mouth twitched a shadow of a smile, maybe. You really made it, didn't you? I did. And it wasn't luck. No, I said softly. It was hunger. When I left, the snow had started again, soft and steady. My mother met me at the door, her hands trembling as she touched my arm. Did he listen? He heard me, I said. That's something. It's a start. I walked back to the car. The cold air biting against my skin, the weight of everything settling somewhere deeper than anger. The headlights cut through the falling snow as I drove away. Behind me, the house faded into darkness. He'd taught me to chase power. I'd learned to choose peace. And for the first time, I realized they weren't the same thing. The headlines didn't stop. They multiplied, mutated like the market itself. Richard Hale steps down after public feud with daughter. Helion Capital surges amid legacy collapse. The woman who outtraded her father. Every time I walked into an elevator or a cafe, someone's screen was showing my face beside his. At first, I tried to ignore it. I buried myself in work and algorithms and projections and the sterile safety of numbers. But no matter how far I ran into the data, I could still hear it, my name, his name tangled together like a currency pair that wouldn't stop trading. By the end of the week, the noise became impossible to avoid. Erin knocked softly on my office door. You've got visitors, she said. Investors. Your brother and your mother. I froze. They came here. They've been waiting in the lobby for an hour. I sighed and straightened my jacket. Send them in. My mother entered first, elegant but tired pearls, trembling faintly against her throat. Mark followed, his expression unreadable. The sharp arrogance that used to define him replaced with something quieter, resentment maybe or shame. Nice office, he said. Bigger than Dad's. Different view, I replied. Mom clasped her hands. Sophia, we need to talk. I figured. I gestured toward the chairs across from my desk. Sit. She hesitated before speaking. Your father's not well. The board forced him out, the firm collapsing. He barely eats. He doesn't sleep. I exhaled. That's not my doing, Mom. That's the price of how he lived. She flinched. You humiliated him in front of everyone. No, I said calmly. I told the truth in front of everyone. There's a difference. Mark leaned forward. You don't get it, Sophia. He built Bennett and Hale from nothing. You took one speech and burned it to the ground. I met his gaze. Maybe it was already burning. I just stopped pretending it wasn't. Mom's voice cracked. You wanted justice. Fine. But now it's vengeance and it's eating all of us. I turned toward the window, watching the city move far below, impatient, alive, indifferent. You all laughed when he mocked me at Christmas. When he called what I did a hobby. You didn't stop him. You didn't defend me. But now that the world knows who I am, suddenly I'm too loud. The silence that followed was heavy and sharp. Mark looked away first. He's still our father. So was I still his daughter, I said. That didn't stop him from turning me into a joke. They left after 15 minutes. The kind of silence trailing behind them that doesn't fade. It lingers like smoke after a fire. When the door closed, Aaron appeared again, cautious. You okay? No, I said honestly. She stepped closer. You don't have to keep being the strong one all the time. Yes, I do. She studied me for a long moment. Then at least admit this: sometimes winning costs more than losing ever could. The next morning, I got the call I'd been waiting for and dreading. It was James Harrington, my oldest investor, the man who'd backed Helion when no one else believed in me. You did it, he said, his voice gravelly but amused. $5 billion under management. You're a phenomenon, Sophia. I smiled faintly. And the family fallout. Everyone's talking about it. You're the new face of power. The rebel CEO who took down her father. I didn't take him down, I said quietly. He fell, he chuckled. History won't care about semantics. Maybe it should. He paused, his tone softening. You okay? I stared out the window. Define okay. Still sleeping with your phone on your pillow. Sometimes. He sighed. That's not success, Sophia. That's survival. Survival got me here. And if you don't learn to stop surviving, it'll be what ends you. Later that day, I canceled all my meetings and went for a walk through Central Park. The winter air was knife cold, the trees bare and skeletal, the ground dusted with frost. For the first time in months, I didn't check the markets. I didn't think about returns or headlines. I just listened to the wind, to the crunch of snow underfoot, to the faint echo of my own breath. Halfway down the path, I stopped near the Bethesda fountain. A group of students were huddled there, laughing, passing around a phone. One of them pointed at me, whispering, "It's her," I heard. "The stock billionaire." I smiled faintly and kept walking. It was strange how easy it was to become an idea instead of a person. To them, I wasn't a daughter, a sister, or even a woman. I was a brand, a headline, a living chart of achievement. And maybe somewhere along the way, I'd started believing it too. That evening, I stood in my penthouse staring out over the city. The skyline shimmered under a thin veil of snow. The lights looked softer than usual, almost forgiving. My father once told me that the market rewards clarity. But what he didn't say is that clarity can be cruel. My phone buzzed. A message from Aaron. CNN wants to do a live interview. The theme's redefining power. You in? I stared at the screen for a moment, then typed back, not yet. For the first time, I didn't want to talk. I didn't want to explain, justify, or inspire. I just wanted to feel something that wasn't performance. I poured a glass of scotch, his drink, not mine, and let it burn slowly and quiet down my throat. Outside, the snow was still falling, the city's pulse steady beneath it. I had everything I'd ever dreamed of. Power, freedom, control. But as I stood there in the dim light, I realized the truth I'd been avoiding. Winning had made me untouchable, but it had also made me alone. I woke before dawn to a message from Aaron Turn on CNBC. Now. The room was still dark, the city outside, just beginning to pulse with the gray light of morning. I grabbed the remote and flicked the TV on. The screen filled with a headline I'd half expected, half feared. Bennett and Hale faces SEC's high investigation. A photo of my father appeared, followed by one of Me Too faces side by side, captioned, "The Fall and Rise of a Dynasty." The anchor's voice was calm, professional, merciless. Sources confirmed that the SEC is investigating Bennett and Hale for accounting irregularities predating Richard Hale's resignation. Insiders suggest the inquiry may have been triggered by disclosures following the Helion Capital IPO. I felt my stomach tighten. The words were surgical, but I could hear what they didn't say aloud. You exposed him, Erin called before the segment ended. You're not responsible, she said without waiting for me to speak. I am indirectly. They would have found it eventually. Maybe. But I lit the spotlight. Don't spiral, she warned. You've worked too hard to carry his mistakes. I turned off the TV. I'm not spiraling, I said quietly. I'm thinking. By the time I reached the office, reporters were already waiting outside Helion's glass doors, their breath fogging in the cold air, microphones thrust forward. Ms. Hale, did you know about your father's accounting practices? Is this your revenge for his humiliation? Was Helion built on Bennett and Hale's downfall? Their questions came like bullets. I didn't answer any of them. I walked straight through the lobby past the camera flashes, my heels clicking like punctuation marks. Inside, Erin was already waiting. Crisis management drafted a statement. Let me see it. She handed me the tablet. The words were polished, sterile, and meaningless. Helion Capital has no involvement in any investigation concerning Bennett and Hale and stands firm in its commitment to ethical transparency. I handed it back. Fine, send it. But I'm doing an interview. Erin froze. No, absolutely not. You can't control that narrative once it's live. I'm not trying to control it, I said. I'm trying to own it. That afternoon, I sat under the soft glare of studio lights, the same lights I'd avoided for years. The CNBC anchor smiled the kind of smile that hides sharpened questions. Ms. Hale, she began. Your rise has been meteoric, but today's headlines link your success indirectly to your father's downfall. How do you respond? I folded my hands. Success isn't always built on destruction, I said evenly. But sometimes to build something new, you have to face the truth about what was broken. So you're saying you had no knowledge of Bennett and Hale's issues. I'm saying transparency is the foundation of everything I've built. Helion's books are open. Always have been. And your father, I hesitated. My father taught me that power comes from control. I learned that real power comes from accountability. There was a pause. The silence felt heavy electric. Then she smiled again, softer this time. That's quite a quote. I returned the smile. Then let's hope people remember it for the right reasons. When the interview aired, the reaction was instant. Praise, criticism, analysis. Every outlet had a take. Some called it poetic justice. Others called it exploitation. That night, Erin texted stocks up 6% after the broadcast. Investors trust you. I didn't reply. Instead, I walked into the bathroom, turned on the light, and stared at my reflection. For a long time, I just looked. The tailored suit, the perfect hair, the calm expression that had become my armor. But behind the poise, there was something else, a woman I barely recognized. I thought about the girl who used to sit in her college dorm at 2 a.m. trading small positions and dreaming of a future that didn't need approval. The girl who was fueled by quiet anger and unshakable belief. Would she even recognize me now? I touched the edge of the mirror, my reflection fracturing under the pressure of my fingertips. You got what you wanted, I whispered. Now what? The next day I visited my father again. The house was quiet, too quiet. My mother met me at the door, her eyes tired but softer than before. He's in the study. He saw the news. Inside, my father sat in his usual chair, the TV muted, the SEC ticker crawling silently across the screen. I'm sorry, I said before he could speak. He laughed bitterly. For what? Telling the truth again, for not understanding what it would cost. He looked up, his face pale, worn. It didn't cost you anything. You're on every cover in America. It cost us, I said. He said nothing for a long time. Then quietly, they're coming for everything I built. Then let them, I said softly. Let them clean it up. You don't have to fight every battle. He looked at me, searching my face for something, anger, pity, forgiveness. I was proud of you once, he said finally, before pride turned into fear. Fear of what? Fear that you'd outgrow me, he said. And you did. The silence that followed wasn't angry. It was fragile human real. "I never wanted to destroy you," I said. "I know," he whispered. "You just wanted to be seen." When I left, snow had begun to fall again. The flakes swirled in the wind, soft but relentless. For the first time, I didn't feel like running from it. Back in my car, I watched the house disappear in the rearview mirror, smaller, distant, fading. I thought about legacy, about power, about the way success can feel like armor until it starts to feel like a cage. The world would keep talking. The markets would keep moving. But somewhere deep inside, a quieter truth had begun to take shape. Maybe victory wasn't about proving him wrong anymore. Maybe it was about learning who I was without the fight. The morning after the interview, the city woke before I did. By the time I opened my eyes, Helion's name was already everywhere again, stock tickers glowing green, op-eds. Dissecting my quotes panels, debating whether I was a visionary or a villain. I brewed my coffee in silence, watching the steam rise against the Manhattan skyline. For once the noise felt distant, like it belonged to someone else. The empire I'd built was running itself, my analysts, my algorithms, my reputation. But what no one could automate was the part that had gone quiet inside me. When Erin arrived at the office that morning, she found me sitting at my desk with no screens on. "Did the power go out?" she asked. "No," I said. "Just giving my eyes a break." She smirked. "You taking a break from the market? Should I alert the press?" I smiled faintly but didn't answer. She studied me for a moment. "You've been different lately." "Define different." "Less fire. More ghosts." I leaned back. "Maybe I just realized fire burns even when you're the one who lit it." She sat across from me. "You built something extraordinary, Sophia. Don't lose it to guilt that doesn't belong to you." "Maybe guilt isn't something you own," I said quietly. "Maybe it owns you." That afternoon, an email pinged on my screen from an unfamiliar address, no subject line. From Richard Hale. Message: "Meet me tomorrow. The cabin. Noon. No explanations, no apologies. Just an instruction like old times." For a long moment I stared at the screen. The cabin was our family's lake house in Vermont, the one he used to take us to when we were kids. It had been his escape from the world. Now it felt like an invitation back into a story I wasn't sure I wanted to reopen. But curiosity or something softer won. The drive was long and gray. The highway lined with frozen trees. The world felt suspended between seasons, caught between what had died and what hadn't learned to bloom again. When I reached the cabin, the air was sharp and clean, the lake frozen solid. My father was standing outside, bundled in a wool coat, the same one I remembered from years ago. He didn't wave. He just watched as I parked, then said, "You came. You asked. I didn't think you would. Neither did I." Inside, the fire was already burning. The room smelled of cedar and smoke, the same scent that used to mean safety when I was 10 and suffocation when I was 20. He gestured toward the sofa. "Sit." I did. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he said, "The investigation's closing in, I saw. They'll find everything. The shell accounts, the misreported earnings, all of it. Will they find your name?" I asked. He gave a small, humorless laugh. "They already have. The legacy's dead, Sophia. Bennett and Hale is over." I met his eyes, then let it die with dignity. He shook his head. "You don't understand. When a name like ours falls, it doesn't just disappear. It echoes." "Maybe it should," I said quietly. "Maybe that's how it ends, not with silence, but with truth." He studied me. "You've changed. Or maybe I just stopped pretending I hadn't." After a long pause, he said, "I watched your interview." I nodded. "I figured. You handled it well. Better than I ever could have." "High praise," I said. Half smiling. "I mean it," he said. "You spoke like a leader, not a fighter." That surprised me. "Is there a difference?" He poured 2 glasses of whiskey and handed me one. "Fighters want to win. Leaders know when to stop fighting." I stared at the amber liquid, then took a slow sip. It burned sharp, familiar. And which one were you? He looked into the fire. A fighter. Always. That's why I lost everything worth keeping. Something in his voice cracked then, not loud, not dramatic, but real. I spent years trying to prove the world wrong, he said. And when I couldn't, I turned that fight on everyone around me. Your mother, your brother, you. The words hung there raw and heavy. I thought control was love, he said softly. That protecting you meant owning your choices. I see now it was fear. I looked at him, at the man who had once seemed unshakable. Fear of what? He turned toward me, eyes tired but clear. That you'd succeed without me. For the first time, I didn't feel anger. I just felt the weight of understanding settle between us, quiet and irrevocable. When I stood to leave, he didn't stop me. He just said, Sophia. I turned back. Don't make my mistakes. Which ones? All of them, he said. Especially the ones that look like ambition. I nodded slowly. Then maybe I'll start by forgiving you. He blinked as if unsure he'd heard me right. You should hate me. I did, I said. For a long time. But hate is just another kind of leash. And I'm done being tied to anything. Outside, the sky had begun to turn gold at the edges, the snow catching the light like scattered glass. As I walked toward my car, the reflection of the lake shimmered faintly under the ice, a perfect silent mirror. And for the first time in years, when I looked into it, I didn't see a fighter or a CEO or a daughter trying to win. I saw someone finally learning how to let go. The invitation came wrapped in gold foil and quiet arrogance. Bennett and Hale, Annual Winter Gala, celebrating legacy and vision. My father's name was still printed at the top, even though the firm was crumbling beneath it. Erin raised an eyebrow when she saw it on my desk. You're not actually thinking of going, are you? I closed the envelope and smiled faintly. Oh, I'm not thinking about it. I already decided. She frowned. Sophia, that event is a circus. Press investors, vultures, all waiting to see blood. Then I'll give them something worth watching. The night of the gala arrived wrapped in cold glitter. The Waldorf's ballroom glowed gold chandeliers dripping with crystals, the kind of excess that pretends it's elegance. Cameras lined the entrance, reporters whispering like predators waiting for the first drop of scent. When I stepped out of the car, the flashbulbs exploded. Ms. Hale. Is it true that your father's resigning? Will you comment on the investigation? Are you here to reconcile or reclaim? I smiled a calm, practiced smile and kept walking. Inside, the air smelled of champagne and desperation. Every surface gleamed, every guest rehearsed their charm. I spotted my mother near the staircase pearls. Perfect as always, her eyes nervous when she saw me. She crossed the room quickly. Sophia, she whispered, touching my arm. You shouldn't have come. You invited me. Your father insisted. Of course he did. Before I could say more, his voice cut through the room like a blade. Sophia. He was standing near the stage, tailored to perfection, still carrying that aura of control, even as the ground beneath him cracked. Glad you could make it, he said, smiling for the cameras. You made sure I couldn't stay away. He leaned closer. Just remember, tonight is about image. We both need this to go smoothly. I think I'll define myself smoothly for myself. The music softened and the lights dimmed. A voice echoed through the speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the founder of Bennett and Hale, Richard Hale. Applause rippled through the crowd, polite and strained. My father took the stage, confident, unbothered, as if nothing outside that ballroom existed. Tonight, he began. We celebrate not just the legacy of a company, but the resilience of a family. My chest tightened. A family. The same word he'd used to silence me years ago. He continued. And no one embodies that resilience more than my daughter, Sophia Hale, whose success with Helion Capital has redefined what it means to lead in finance. A spotlight turned toward me. The crowd clapped again, louder this time. Whispers floated through the air, admiration, curiosity, disbelief. I stood slowly. The sound of my heels sharp against the marble floor, and walked toward the stage. My father smiled, holding out the microphone. Say a few words. I took it. My pulse thrummed in my ears, but my mind was utterly calm. The room quieted. Thank you, I began softly. I wasn't sure I'd be here tonight, but perhaps this is the only place left where I can close this chapter. The audience leaned in. Cameras rolled. My father's face was a mask of cold anticipation. My father's vision for success was clear control power and the endurance of the name I said, my gaze sweeping the room. He spent a lifetime building an empire, and I spent years building my own in opposition to it. A deep final silence fell. But tonight, I realized the fight is over. Not because I've won the battle of numbers, but because I've won the battle of self. I continued, my voice low, but carrying absolute certainty. The legacy of Bennett and Hale is not mine to claim, nor is it mine to save. It belongs only to the past. And I refuse to be bound to a story that keeps me defined by the conflict I overcame. I paused, meeting my father's eyes not with anger but with finality. I came tonight to give back the name I was given. I finished setting the microphone down gently on the stand. I am Sophia. My future is not an inheritance. It is a frontier. I left the stage before the applause began, if there was any. The sound blurred behind me as I stepped out into the cold night air. Snow was falling again, soft and relentless. I exhaled, the breath trembling out of me like something finally released. A few minutes later, Aaron called. "What the hell did you just do?" "The truth," I said simply. "You just detonated a legacy on live television." Then maybe it was time for something new to rise from the ashes. There was a long pause. "You're trending again." "Of course I am." Later that night, I stood by the river outside the hotel, watching the city lights ripple across the water. My reflection wavered on the dark surface, stronger, older, untouchable. For years, I'd dreamed of this moment, of finally standing in a room full of the people who once dismissed me and making them see. And now that I had it, didn't feel like triumph. It felt like peace. I thought about the last words my father had said before I left the cabin, "Don't make my mistakes." Maybe I realized he'd already given me permission to destroy the story he'd written for me. As the snow thickened around me, I whispered to no one, "This isn't revenge anymore. It's released." The city glowed behind me, alive and unbothered. Somewhere in the distance, cameras still replayed my speech. But for the first time, I didn't care who was watching. The headlines hit like thunder the next morning. Bennett and Hale implodes after public confrontation. Richard Hale, under investigation board. Votes for immediate removal. By sunrise, every financial network was looping my speech from the gala, the part where I said, "You wanted a legacy, Dad. Now you have one. Me." Halion's shares spiked. Bennett and Hale's plummeted. The market, as always, fed on blood. I sat at my desk in silence, the skyline pale with dawn behind me. Erin entered with her phone in hand. "Sophia," she said carefully, "they're saying your father's been forced out. Effective immediately." I didn't answer. She hesitated. He's not taking calls. Your mother's worried." I closed my eyes. For a moment, I saw his face the night before, the way his smile faltered when I spoke. "What did you expect?" I murmured. That the truth would stay contained in a ballroom. Erin stepped closer. "You could still reach out, to say what I asked, that I didn't mean it because I did." She sighed softly. "Yeah, but meaning it doesn't make it easier to live with." By noon, the story had evolved from drama to downfall. Bennett legacy in crisis. Helion heiress. Ends her father's empire. The press framed it like mythology, a daughter slaying the king, the market rewarding the execution. They called me the Iron Angel of Wall Street, as if destroying your own bloodline was a virtue. Every outlet wanted an interview. CNN, Bloomberg, even Forbes. I ignored them all. Then the call came, not from a journalist but from my mother. Her voice was thin, trembling. "Sophia, he's collapsing. You need to come home. Now." "What happened?" "They forced him out. The board voted this morning. It wasn't just the resignation this time. They're locking down the accounts. He's He's completely shut down. Please, he barely speaks. He just sits there. When I arrived at the house that evening, the world looked smaller than I remembered. The snow had turned to slush, and the lawn that once seemed immaculate was covered in gray melt. My mother met me at the door. Her eyes were red, her lipstick gone. Her voice was devoid of judgment, only exhaustion. He hasn't left his office in 2 days. He's talking about selling everything. He said he has nothing left to stabilize. I stepped inside. The house smelled of dust and bourbon. In the study, the fire was burning low. My father sat slumped behind his desk, the room littered with papers, stock reports, headlines, old photographs. He didn't look up when I entered. "Dad," I said quietly. He took a long sip of whiskey before answering. "Come to see the ruins." I swallowed hard. "I came to see you." He laughed bitterly. "You already saw me last night. You made sure the whole world did. That wasn't my plan." "No," he said, his voice sharp now. "But it was your truth. And the truth has a price." I stepped closer. "You think I wanted this? You think I wanted to watch everything burn?" He finally looked at me, then eyes bloodshot but still piercing. "You wanted to win. Don't lie to yourself." I didn't move. Maybe I did. But I didn't want you to lose like this. He slammed his glass down, the sound shattering through the silence. "There is no winning without losing Sophia. I taught you that." "Yes," I said softly. "And I learned the rest on my own. There's no peace without surrender." The fire cracked between us. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then his shoulders dropped, his voice suddenly small. "You took everything," he said. "The company, the headlines, the name. What's left for me?" I felt something inside me twist. "Maybe peace," I said again. He stared into the fire. "There's no peace in irrelevance." "Then stop measuring yourself by power," I said. "Start with being human again." He gave a hollow laugh. "You sound like your mother. Maybe that's not such a bad thing." When I left the study, my mother was standing in the hallway. "Did he listen?" she asked. "He heard me," I said. "That's a start." She touched my arm gently. "You did what you thought was right." "I did what I thought was fair," I said. "But fairness doesn't feel like justice anymore." Outside, the night was silent. I sat in my car for a long time before starting the engine. The reflection in the windshield looked like someone older, harder. The world had finally given me everything I'd asked for, and I wasn't sure I wanted any of it. Back in Manhattan, Helion was buzzing. Investors were thrilled, analysts ecstatic. The firm had crossed $10 billion in assets under management. The entire floor greeted me with applause when I arrived the next morning. "Congratulations, Ms. Hale," one of the analysts said. "You did it." I smiled faintly. "Did what? Built an empire." Empire. The word felt heavy now. Empires demanded casualties, and I'd already sacrificed the one thing that used to keep me grounded. James Harrington called later that day. "You've done what no one else in this industry has. You're at the top of the mountain." "And what's up here?" I asked. He paused. "Cold air and a great view." "Sounds lonely." He chuckled. "It always is. But you didn't come this far for company." "Maybe I did," I said quietly. That night I couldn't sleep. I stood by the window watching the city pulse below. My father's last words echoed in my mind. "There's no peace in irrelevance." Maybe he was right. Maybe we were both cursed with the same disease ambition that refused to rest. But as the first light of dawn crept over the skyline, something shifted. For the first time, I didn't feel like fighting anymore. Not the markets, not my father, not myself. Maybe true victory wasn't about winning at all. Maybe it was about finally putting the sword down and walking away. The first snow of December came quiet and relentless, blanketing the city like a clean slate that refused to stay clean. By the time I reached the Helion office that morning, the building felt like it was humming, every screen alive, every analyst awake and alert. The world might have been slowing down for the holidays, but markets didn't sleep, and neither did I. Erin walked in with 2 coffees. "You're in early," she said, handing me one. I couldn't sleep. She sat across from me, crossing her legs carefully. You've been running nonstop for years, Sophia. Maybe it's time to figure out what stopping looks like. Stopping doesn't build companies. Neither does burnout, she countered. I gave a small laugh. You sound like James. He's right too, she said. You won. Everyone knows it. Your father's out, your firm's on top. So what are you still chasing? I stared at her for a long moment. Peace, I said finally. That afternoon, my brother called. I hadn't heard from him since the gala. His voice was different, tired, subdued. Mom wanted me to check on you, he said. I'm fine. He laughed softly. You've been saying that since we were kids. It wasn't true then either. I smiled faintly. How's Dad recovering? Slowly. He's quieter now. There was a pause. He keeps your interview on DVR. Watch it sometimes. That caught me off guard. He what? Yeah, Mark said. I think he's trying to understand you. Maybe himself, too. I didn't know what to say. The silence between us felt like something fragile but alive. Finally, he added, You should come for Christmas this year. Mark, I know. But Mom's been asking. And Dad? He won't admit it, but he wants to see you. I hesitated. We'll see. Just think about it, he said softly. Sometimes forgiveness is a form of rebellion, too. The week before Christmas, I made a decision that startled even me. I called Erin into my office. Effective January, Helion becomes a partnership, I said. Her eyes widened. A partnership, as in shared ownership. Every senior analyst, strategist, and developer gets equity based on contribution. You're giving away half your company. I'm giving it back, I corrected. She blinked, processing. You realize this changes everything. Good, I said. That's the point. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she smiled a small, disbelieving smile. You're insane. Probably. She shook her head. But it's the most brilliant kind of insane I've ever seen. 2 days later, I sat in the boardroom as the Helion team gathered 60 people who had helped build my empire from the ground up. I told them everything: the ownership transition, the new structure, the future we'd create together. At first there was silence. Then one of the junior traders, a kid barely out of college, stood up. You're serious? He asked. We're partners, I nodded. You earned it. The applause that followed was unlike anything I'd ever heard, not polite, not professional, but real. It filled the room like oxygen. For the first time, I felt what my father never had, not control, but connection. Afterward, Erin found me by the window. Your father would never have done this, she said. I know, I said softly. That's why I have to. Christmas came with its usual mix of dread and nostalgia. The Hale house looked smaller than I remembered, the wreaths dimmer, the lights fewer. My mother opened the door, her face softening with something that felt like relief. You came, she said. I said I might. She smiled through tears. That's as close to yes as you ever get. Inside, the fire crackled. My father was in his chair, thinner, grayer, but upright. He looked up when I entered, his expression unreadable. Dad, I said. Sophia. His voice was quieter than I remembered. I sat across from him. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then he said, I read about the partnership. News travels fast. He nodded. You're giving away what I spent a lifetime keeping. Maybe that's how I break the pattern. He looked at me, eyes sharper now. You sound like someone who's learned too much too soon. Maybe you taught me that part. He chuckled softly, almost painfully. You know, I used to think legacy meant control. That keeping everything close was the only way to protect it. And now? Now I think legacy is just another word for fear. Fear that if we stop building, we'll disappear. I leaned back, studying him. You're not disappearing, Dad. Neither are you, he said quietly. But I hope you find a way to exist without the fight. There was something in his tone that made my chest ache. Maybe resignation. Maybe grace. He reached for a small wooden box on the table and handed it to me. Inside was his old Mont Blanc pen, the one he'd used to sign every deal, every merger, every triumph of his career. It's yours now, he said. Do something better with it than I did. I closed the box gently. I will. That night after dinner, I stepped outside alone. The snow had started again, soft and thick, blanketing the world in white silence. For years, that silence had felt like punishment. Now it felt like peace. The lights from inside the house glowed faintly through the windows. My mother laughing, my brother pouring wine, my father sitting quietly beside the fire. For the first time, they didn't look like ghosts from the past I was running from. They looked like a family learning how to exist again. I thought about everything I'd built, the empire, the wealth, the name, and realized that none of it mattered if it ended here. Legacy. I decided wasn't about power or inheritance. It was about leaving the world softer than you found it. As the snow kept falling, I whispered to the dark sky, maybe this is what healing sounds like. Quiet, steady, real. And for once, I didn't need anyone to hear it but me. The world woke to a new headline. Helion Capital becomes employee-owned, a new era of Wall Street leadership. By the time I arrived at the office, the news was everywhere. Screens buzzed with interviews, analysts speculating about the Hale model, the radical shift in power that no one saw coming. I didn't do interviews. I didn't need to. The numbers and the people behind them spoke loud enough. Erin met me in the elevator. "You realize you just made history," she said. I smiled faintly. "Then let's make it worth remembering." She grinned. "You're trending again, CEO Hale. Only this time, they're calling you the conscience of finance." "Conscience," I repeated, amused. "That's a new one." By noon, the entire office gathered on the trading floor. Laughter replaced tension, handshakes replaced competition. People who once looked at me with reverence now looked at me with something better, trust. I stood by the window watching snow drift across the skyline, the city pulsing with life. Erin approached quietly. "You know, she said your father would be proud." I didn't turn around. "He told me once that control was everything. And you proved him wrong." Maybe I said. Or maybe I just redefined it. The thought lingered as I returned to my office. On my desk sat the wooden box he'd given me, the Mont Blanc pen glinting in the light. I ran my fingers along its smooth surface, feeling the weight of everything it symbolized: power, ego, legacy. Then I picked it up and signed the final transfer papers for the Helion partnership with that same pen. The circle closed, but it didn't feel like an ending. It felt like a release. That evening I found myself walking alone through Central Park. The air was crisp, the snow fresh under my boots. For once, no one recognized me. No cameras, no whispers, no eyes tracking every step. Just the city breathing and me breathing with it. A young woman approached from a nearby bench. "Excuse me," she said shyly. "You're Sophia Hale, right?" I hesitated, then nodded. "Yes." She smiled nervously. "I just wanted to say thank you. I started investing last year because of you. Not for the money, but because you made it look possible." Her words hit deeper than I expected. "Possible? Yeah," she said, her eyes bright. "You showed people like me that we don't need permission to start. We just need courage." I smiled. "Keep that. It's worth more than capital." As she walked away, I realized something I'd missed all these years. Maybe success wasn't about proving people wrong. Maybe it was about giving someone else a reason to believe they could be right. When I got home, the apartment was dark except for the city lights spilling through the glass. On my desk was a single envelope with my father's handwriting. My pulse slowed. The ink had faded slightly, but the letters were steady, deliberate. "Sophia, if you're reading this, I'm gone." Nothing dramatic, just the quiet kind of leaving that comes when the body's done fighting. I wanted to tell you something I never said when it mattered. I'm proud of you. Not for the money or the headlines, but because you survived me. You took everything I built from fear and turned it into something built from freedom. You are the best thing I ever made, even if I didn't realize it until the end. Love, Dad. My hands trembled slightly as I folded the letter back. Outside, the snow glowed gold beneath the streetlights. For a long time, I just stood there breathing, feeling the strange mix of loss and gratitude settle into something almost peaceful. He hadn't left me an empire. He'd left me understanding that love and pride were never the same thing, and control was just the shadow of fear. I placed the letter beside the pen and whispered, "Goodbye, Dad." I walked to the window, the paper still warm in my hand. The city lights, usually a symbol of conquest, now felt like silent, supportive witnesses. The pain didn't vanish. It simply quieted, transforming into a dull, enduring strength. I realized his death was not the end of the fight, but the final undeniable proof of my own survival. I no longer had anything to prove, only something to build in his absence. It wasn't victory that settled over me, but a profound responsibility. I wasn't just the woman who left the legacy. I was the woman who had to define what came next. Spring came quietly that year. The markets calmed, the world moved on, and so did I. The Helion Foundation launched in March, a financial literacy initiative for women from underserved communities. The first scholarship bore my father's name. When a reporter asked me why, I said, "Because even the people who break you can be the reason you learn to rebuild." The foundation grew faster than we expected. Within months, we'd helped hundreds of women start businesses, invest, and claim financial independence. Each success story felt like a ripple, small but unstoppable. At the opening ceremony, Aaron leaned over and whispered, "You realize you're rewriting your father's legacy?" I shook my head. "No, I'm writing mine." Weeks later, I stood on the balcony of my apartment overlooking the Hudson. The city shimmered beneath a wash of sunset, golden and alive. I thought about every version of myself that had led here: the girl mocked at Christmas, the woman who built an empire from spite, the CEO who finally learned to let go. I wasn't angry anymore. Not at my father, not at the past, not even at myself. For years, revenge had been my engine. It burned hot, bright and fast. But peace was something else entirely. It didn't roar. It breathed. I whispered into the fading light, "You were wrong, Dad. Real success doesn't come from control. It comes from letting go." And for the first time, I knew he'd agree. The next morning, my calendar was full: meetings, calls, interviews. But I closed the laptop and walked outside instead. The city felt different now, not like a battlefield, but like a home. A child was feeding pigeons near the fountain, her laughter cutting through the hum of traffic. A street musician played a soft tune nearby. The world was moving, imperfect but alive. I took out my phone, opened my notes app, and typed one final message for my team. Remember, we don't build empires to prove we're right. We build them to make room for others to rise. I hit send and smiled. The wind picked up scattering petals from the trees across the pavement like confetti. I walked on the city unfolding ahead of me, endless, unpredictable, beautiful. Maybe that was the real ending, not triumph, not revenge, but motion, the quiet kind that means you're still becoming. If you've ever been underestimated, remember this: the loudest victory isn't revenge, it's peace. Live long enough to see your scars turn into strength, your pain into proof, and your story into light. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply to keep going. If this story found you, share it. Someone out there still needs to know that the light after revenge can shine brighter than you ever imagined.